Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. A joy to be with you. Again, it's so amazing to me that our technology today can bring us together even as we're in distant places. So today I'm coming to you from Elgin, Texas, even though it looks like southern India. Well, actually it looks kind of like Tibet, doesn't it? So this is Gandhin Chartse Monastery in southern India. It's the monastery I belong to. All right. Well, we are in the portion of the text on karma. So I thought we had a pretty good discussion last week. Fair warning before we dig into the text. I'm not sure we're going to read because normally I've read it, prepared, and I miscalculated my time zone. So it's all going to be news to me too. So let's see what they have to say. And let's pop right into it here. All right, the law of karma and its effects. It's helpful to review the three characteristics of all systems of causality mentioned in chapter 7. Okay, so effects arise from causes and cannot arise without causes. So that's kind of a baseline. Is there anything that arises without a cause? Is there anything that comes into existence on its own without a cause? So kind of a foundational thing here. And that's where people get kind of stuck in the kind of loop. Well, how did this whole thing start? Well, you need a cause. Well, there need to be a cause for the cause. And then you need to be a cause for that cause. So things don't come from nothing. And so how did all this start? There had to be something, but for there to be something, there had to be a cause for that something. So often in Buddhism, you'll hear the word beginningless time, which basically means, they just can't explain, what caused what. It just goes back, beginningless time. So yeah, makes sense. Does anything come into existence out of nothing without a cause? So I'd say no, there needs to be a cause. And the example, and we use this one a lot. A tree grows from the seed and cannot grow without a seed. Okay, no seed, no tree. We can have soil, water, nutrients, sun, everything else. Everything can be there. No seed, no tree. So that's always a key point to understanding primary causes versus secondary causes or conditions. Causes are impermanent because the arising of an effect necessitates the cessation of the cause. The seed ceases and changes into a sprout and then a tree. Effects must be concordant with their causes. Only a specific cause can produce a specific result. Pine trees grow from pine seeds, not from daisy seeds. Furthermore, one cause alone cannot produce an effect. Cooperative conditions are needed. The seed grows into a tree only when there is sufficient water, fertilizer, and heat. So these effects, well, let me go back to two, are impermanent. So we're going to find pretty much everything's impermanent. And then there has to be, the concordant causes, which is going to be really relevant in how we think about, for example, causes of anger, causes of jealousy, those types of things. There's a lot of times where we pointing the finger at somebody else for my anger. And that's the distinction, right? The cause of an anger has to be something of a same stuff. Seed, the tree, same stuff. Different formation, same stuff, same essence. Likewise, anger is a mental state, mental emotion state. So that cause got to be within me. The person I'm pointing to would be those conditions that trigger, right, the anger or the jealousy or whatever. So we often will confuse that and think they're the actual primary cause when they're actually a secondary cause or a condition, depending on how they word it. Okay, so let's see where they're going with this. Okay, so the three things, right? There has to be a cause. Causes are impermanent. Effects and causes, right? They have to be related. Concordant is the word they're using. Specific cause, specific result. We can see the specific causes of many external things. However, if we search for the causes of those causes and the causes of those causes, going back to the origin of this universe, we will not be able to pinpoint precisely each and every cause and condition. All the details of all of the causes of the Big Bang are too vast and complex for us to understand. We would not feel right saying that the universe arose without causes. We know that its development follows particular laws of nature, certain systemic ways of growth and decay, even though we may not be able to discern each unique cause and condition. Similarly, on the internal level, sentient beings' experiences of happiness and suffering arise from preceding causes and conditions. Secular society usually traces these to genetic or environmental factors and does not consider the law of karma and its effects. Bringing in the ethical dimension of our mental intentions gives us a fuller picture of both sentient beings' experiences and the environment they inhabit. So, this is always going to be a bit of a rich discussion. This, don't really get that whole multiple life thing, or, there's a stream of consciousness going life to life. And so as we start looking at, is there this ethical role that plays, or is it, just genetics and conditioning and, the sort of, in a sense of continuum, my parents and their parents, and we have sort of generational genetics and things that can be passed down that way. And so, these are all things that people explore and worthwhile to explore. So what's being shown here is a Buddhist perspective, not an ultimate, Well, I'll need to check this out. So, but, when we kind of get into the sort of explanation around genetics, generational things, there's research and different things that even convey, right, generational trauma and how that's brought in, body after body, generation after generation, and so forth. So those imprints would be there as well. Yeah, so a rich discussion we may have in a minute. We'll see how it all goes. one of the things for me that it just makes sense to me is why some people come in this world as prodigies. Some people come to this world very young, and they can do so many things. People of twins even that have different attributes and different qualities. Where I find that the answers around conditioning and genetics don't really answer the whole picture. Why is this kid same genetics, same everything? Got all of this capacity, and of course, we have all the people who, with all the research around, previous life and all that. So it just kind of, for me personally, was not a big stretch when I investigated, when I have direct experience with some very young people who are, just incredible beings. And, so in my exploration, seems pretty rational. But here is being presented the Buddhist perspective. And as always, it's things to investigate, things to check out, things to explore. And we're being brought in, if we bring in this basis of a continuum of consciousness, it goes from one life to the next. And then the imprints of previous lives, creating the conditions for the consciousness we have. Again, we'd say, what's the cause for your consciousness, right? Well, there had to be a previous mode of consciousness. There's kind of like the reasoning there. So the other sort of view would be that consciousness is some emergent property of a brain, with the chemicals, electricity in the brain, and that dies, and then there's no more consciousness. So again, these are all discussions to be thoroughly thought out, and not to be accepted simply because, it's a Buddhist teaching. But having said that, we're in a Buddhist teaching. It's kind of a Buddhist center. So let's see what His Holiness 14th Dalai Lama and Thubten Chodron have to say here as we continue on. As a natural process that functions, whether or not a person believes in it. Okay, so it doesn't matter whether you believe something or not. If it's a natural function, it just happens anyway. The law of karma and its effects was not created by the Buddha, nor does the Buddha judge people according to their actions and punish or reward them. When someone suffers from illness in which his or her unwholesome karma plays a causal role along with other factors, it does not mean that they deserve to suffer or that they made themselves sick. Nor should we ignore those who are injured or oppressed by unjust social structures, thinking that helping them would interfere with their karma. This is a poor excuse for our lack of compassion. Needless to say, those holding such attitudes create destructive karma themselves. I believe I talked a little bit about this last week. When we think about karma and, something tragic happening, that, it's not because you deserve it, right? That's not the way it works. Karma plays out on multiple layers, multiple factors, and I think I used like a car accident or something last week, if I'm correct. And you get in a car accident, you get injured, it's traumatic, and well, there's the karma of the roads and the city that you live in, the people who made the cars, the fact that cars are made, the other person and their life and all the people that contributed to their life and their conditioning and all the people, in your life and your conditioning. So there's just this very elaborate karma that's ripening on multiple levels. And you have, something to do with it, a little bit. But there's all that playing out. So it's not when sometimes people, think about, they've been harmed in a very brutal way or something like that, and you get these teachings, they think, well, they deserved it, and that's not what's being said here, and they're being very clear that it doesn't deserve that. There's a rich array of conditions that are ripening in different karmas. Also, as pointed out, sitting there thinking, well, don't want to interfere with their karma, going to be kind and generous and let them suffer. And the point is, no, that's not the way that works either. This might be ripening for you to have compassion, make a difference, and engage with compassion. So it's great that they're getting right to some misperceptions that show up for people a lot. It's important to avoid superimposing concepts from theistic religions on the Buddha Dharma. The Buddha is not a creator. Karma and its effects are not a system of reward or punishment, simply a natural law. Happiness is a result of virtue. Suffering is the result of non-virtue. And, this sometimes can be pretty hard to grasp because it does seem like, there's somebody punishing or rewarding. And key point here is the Buddha was a human being, right? Buddha was not a creator, not a god, not any of those things. And his journey was to see if it was necessary to suffer. Is it necessary for aging, sickness, and death? Was all this suffering that people go through mentally, emotionally necessary? And is there a way to not suffer? And so that was his mission, his journey. That's what he spent his life endeavor initially trying to discover. And ultimately, his big discovery was we don't need to suffer, that this has all arisen out of a misunderstanding of ourselves and our experience. And out of that, we create this karma, which, we become conditioned by, and we're kind of trapped in this cycle. And so it's not that the Buddha was God, doesn't any of those things. He's a human who basically, they say, woke up, right? Became enlightened. Matter of fact, when asked, are you a god? Are you, human? Are you this? Are you that? They went through a whole list of things, trying to figure out what are you? And the Buddha's answer was, I'm awake. I'm awake. Right? Not a god, I'm just awake. I know who I am. And so that's the whole Buddhist journey, to know who you are. And you'd be free of all the misperceptions. So not a creator, not any of those things, just awake. And in this journey to be awake, he can see clearly, and he saw the natural order of sort of laws of karma, and explained, his teachings sought to explain how we suffer, how we create karma, and most importantly, how to stop doing that and wake up. Sounds pretty simple. It's just a bit challenging. And so there's no sense that punishment or this or that. And it gets very tricky when we even try to think that way. And so it's the point being made here is not to think in these sort of theistic terms, but much more, if you water a tree, it'll grow, right? If you have soil and these other things, if you don't water a tree, it doesn't have anything, it'll die. And it's just, karma's like that, cause and effect. And these are some of the particular causes that lead to this habituation, and some of the ones that free us from it. So just explain it that way. So as we look into these, what we call laws of karma, they're viewed as just natural laws. No one's to blame. There's no finger pointing. But it does kind of put a burden on us, okay? Because apparently, if you want to wake up, you have to do the work, okay? There is support, right? There is support. Create a myriad of conditions. We talked about that earlier with different rituals and ways of building connections in healthy environments and producing the results that we need. So there's support, But just like with fertilizer, soil, and water, even though all that support's there, if there's no seed, there's no tree. So we need to do our part. So it's kind of a sort of a, what do they call it? Two-edged sword, right? Two-edged sword or blade. Yeah. Hey, you can do this. Well, you have to do it. It's kind of a downside. So the journey is, we do have this capacity. And the exciting thing is we've got the conditions available. We've got this rare and precious human birth. We've got the teachings, the guidebook's been handed to us. We've got the conditions have ripened, like everything's here. And it's simply just following the directions. Simply, not easily. Two different things. Nowadays, we hear the word karma used in a flippant way. For example, when asked, why did my business fail when it seemed to have everything required for success? Some might dismiss it by replying, it's karma. Meaning, I don't know. It was fated and nothing can be done about it. These are inappropriate usages of the word karma. The principal meaning of karma is volitional action, right? So volitional with motivation, volition in the sense of a physical, verbal, or mental action done with this intention, right? So physical is something we do, verbal something we say, but also mental action. So movements of the mind is going to have a result. It is intention, bhikkhus, that I call kamma. So this is Pali language here, kamma. For having willed, one acts by body, speech, or mind. All karmic paths originate with the mind. Mind is the forerunner of all miserable states. It's mind that leads the way, just as the wheel of the ox cart follows the hoof of the ox. So suffering will surely follow when we speak or act impulsively from an impure state of mind. Mind is the forerunner of all happy states. Mind, it is mind that leads the way. Just as our shadow never leaves us, so well-being will surely follow when we speak or act from pure state of mind. Okay. And they're going to get into, let's talk about that. So what that's mean is even before we speak, that's coming from initiate with the mind, action initiated by the mind. So very important to try to be in touch with our mind and be aware of our motivations, our triggers, what's coming up. And again, mind in Buddhism is not the brain. Okay, so this whole body is going to be part of our mind as well. So we've got a nervous system that's going to be talking. We've got this whole experience of these conditions and habituations and this, sort of mind-body experience. And all of that is primary, right? So the mind is primary in Buddhism. And then everything else follows. So, and when they're saying mind is primary, it's primary over the body even. So it would say that this body arose from, from our mind, basically all the karmic imprints that gave rise to seeing myself in this experience in this body and so forth. But even, let's say you're not to that stage yet, it's pretty easy to note that we don't have control over a lot of things that we think, say, and do because of our conditioning, our habituation. We've been traumatized, our nervous systems, have been hijacked due to the different experiences we've had in our lives and compulsions that we've developed and so forth, that we're going to notice that a lot of our actions, we might do some things that we wouldn't want to do, that we even feel good about doing. We might want to do something and our mind and body want to do something else, okay? And so that could be eating, it could be, exercising, it could be lots of different things, substances, just, in a relationship reacting in a way we don't, we certainly didn't want to, from our heart, but we did so otherwise. So in this case, you're going to notice that this, this mind is going to be primary. So really valuable to watch how you water your mind, how you nurture your mind. What's the experience? How do we take care of this mind body? And then the more that we can do that in a healthier, more meaningful way, and train our minds and tame our minds and nurture and grow, wholesome, virtuous thoughts and practices. Well, we're going to respond then with our speech and our actions in a healthier way. And by the way, let's then look at the ethical point here, right? So, or morality. Do you feel better about who you are when you do things in alignment with your values? Nothing theistic, nothing religious, nothing like that. Generally, I'm going to say from just my years of experience personally and working with others for a few decades, and there's a lot of empirical research on cognitive dissonance and so forth, that human beings, when they act in alignment with their values and beliefs, feel a lot better about who they are, okay? And the more you feel better about who you are, the more capacity you have to have healthier relationships and respond in more meaningful ways. And so you don't need to believe in past or previous lives or any of that. Past or future, not past or previous, that's the same thing, right? Past or future lives. And so you're going to see how this dynamics, playing out wherever we're at. And the thing is to always look at it empirically from our own side, but maybe, wherever we're at that point. And so we also want to distinguish something. I can act in alignment with my values in a way that I find ethical and meaningful and still get mugged, okay? Right? That's the point that they're making here is that me being mugged has nothing to do with my mental and emotional state as far as the thing, right? It's going to be this physical thing that happens to me. Well, hopefully, I don't know, I could get hurt getting mugged, or I might not, right? But let's say I even got hurt. Where the imprints are going to be, we're talking about mental, emotional states. How resilient will I be bouncing back from that? What's my capacity to heal from maybe a traumatizing event or not? And so, again, causes, mental, emotional causes, mind, body, not to be confused with, whether you get a business to succeed or fail, right? Yeah. So again, those require a whole lot of other conditions. You could be a hardworking entrepreneur with the best idea in the world, but there's marketing and all these other conditions that have to rise, and all these other things that have to happen for something to take off, and there has to be the need, and just all these other things and other people's karmas and whether they ripen together and all of that. This monastery sitting behind me. I sometimes used to think it was my responsibility to make it exist for the next, however many years, which, by the way, is big responsibility and kind of a little bit of pressure. So when I ran the tours, we funded the monastery basically. So, I was a monk, or we'd go town to town and we'd do these events, and And you could get like, wow, if this isn't successful, these monks are going to starve, kind of a big responsibility. But I realized that whether this monastery exists has a lot more to do with things better than me, like, the karma and conditions for this monastery, which was, initiated in 1409 in Tibet and had been destroyed and had moved to India and been rebuilt, and all the efforts of all those monks who made this happen and how many people died and all of that, had much more to do than whether or not my tour, raised enough money in my own mind that's going to support it, right? And so really stepping away from the results and focusing on how we engage with the conditions that are ripening for us. And so with that pressure off me, I could focus on just helping the people in front of us. With the monks, we would do the things that are most helpful. And, Buddhism only, from our perspective, exists on donations. So here we are, right? We have a Dharma center, right? And if you make donations, guess what? We'll have a Dharma center. If you guys don't make donations, well, then I'm not going to be doing this. Got some other things to do, and that's, it's just the way it is, right? But we don't sell that short. We don't sit there and say, well, you need to raise so much money. Here's our budget. And, we're going to start charging memberships or whatever, Buddhism exists basically on causes and conditions. So Dharma teachings are free, things work like that. And you stay out of that result and you focus on, are you being helpful? Are you engaged in activities that are meaningful and in alignment with the values and the ethics and your beliefs that work for you? And then, all those other factors play out. But my job is me, right? That's my job. Your job is you. Our job collectively, we want to change the world. Well, let's try being nice to each other. It's a good place to start. Let's maybe be a little tolerant. Let's kind of understand different people have some different views. Remember, I have different views than I used to have. Yeah, believe it or not. And, and so let's learn to play well with each other. Okay, good. They haven't thrown me off yet so far, so doing pretty good. So, yeah, this is also very important. Not every instance of mental factor of intention creates karma, but intention, volition, is always necessary for the creation of karma. Mental factors such as anger, attachment, and love also play a role in the creation of karma. While karma may be physical, verbal, or mental, all actions can be traced back to an intention in our mind. Our body and mouth do not move on their own. They act spurred by an intention in our mind. The mind is the root of all our actions and the source of the happiness and suffering that result from them. When we carefully observe our own experience, we will see how true this is. For example, with a particular intention, we adopt a certain behavior in the early part of our life. While some of its effects may manifest immediately, some may ripen only decades in the future. Likewise, our motivation in the morning sets the stage for what we experience and how we act later in the day. When we're in a bad mood, we meet more obnoxious people. Funny that they all show up that day. Yeah, man, couldn't they have showed up when I was in a better mood? Because I'd have been able to deal with them better. And yeah, we act rudely. These examples illustrate causality within life. When we talk about karma and its effects, it primarily concerns causes created in one life, bringing results in future lives. in both cases, we see that our happiness and suffering are not the effect of an external creator, nor are they causeless. Okay, so that just hopefully holds up when you investigate whether you believe or not in multiple lives. They come about because of our intentions and actions. Our experience of happiness and suffering is in our own hands. So again, it's coming back to our motivations, our intentions, how we're creating the conditions for ourselves or not. There's another sub point here that wasn't in there. I don't know if it'll come up, but I think it's important to highlight. They're talking about intentional thoughts, okay? Intentional, that's key. Because if you start meditating, you're going to notice there's a whole lot of thoughts popping up in your head. And some of them are pretty darn scary, okay? And they can be pretty selfish. You might have thoughts like, man, I hope so-and-so dies, or I hope so-and-so frees from this. Like these thoughts might pop up. And we're going to think, man, I'm such a bad person. We may not think, man, I'm a bad person. We might think, without the man part. That's just my old really childhood language that popped up here from a previous condition. You might think, wow, I am such an evil person to have such a thought, right? But you didn't think it intentionally, did you? It just popped up. So we'll have thoughts, we'll have, be emotionally tired and somebody has just been this, drain on us and some thoughts may pop up that are kind of terrible, or it might have been our dreams. Those thoughts that pop up without intention, without volition, right? There's not a karmic imprint there. They're ethically neutral. Doesn't matter. Unless you grab that thought. Okay. Then you get messy with it. Okay. So we can have the harmful, crazy thought or whatever it is. No big deal. It just arose, it came, you looked at it and said, oh, that's terrible. And you moved on. How we respond to it is going to matter. The thoughts are ethically neutral unless we engage with them. And then we could engage with them in a healthy way and just go, wow, that's an awful thought. Okay, now I've got a virtuous thought, right? So we're good with that. It's create some good karmic imprint. A lot of people will beat themselves up for some of the thoughts that arise in their mind. And we have to understand those thoughts are just coming up from the psyche. And the mind is always doing stuff like this. We don't always notice. And when those types of thoughts arise, they're habitual. They're just percolating, dredging, popping up. But they also didn't come from nowhere, right? They've come from this whole conditioning and life we've lived and so forth. And so it's really valuable to water, nurture, and grow the types of thoughts you want to have. Kindness, compassion, these loving kindness, virtuous thoughts of gratitude, contentment, things like that. So on purpose, we can start cultivating these. And I would recommend, if those of you doing the Heroic Heart book, the 3rd chapter really talks about how we can water, nurture, and grow those types of thoughts. The title is about solitude, but that's not what she's talking about. She's talking about putting ourselves in environments and engaging in your lifestyle in a way that's going to nurture wholesome thoughts and decrease, toxic, unhealthy thoughts. So we can do this on purpose. We can do it in the morning. We can do it with our prayers or our contemplations, our gratitude meditations, all of that. We can start imprinting those in our mind. And then sometimes, instead of, I should sock that person in the face, somebody says, I see those people are suffering. That might pop up, compassion instead. And so we can be creating the cause for these other types of thoughts by consciously doing our, loving kindness, our gratitudes, our compassion types of meditations. And then you might notice they'll pop up more because we're creating the causes for them. Yeah, but just because you have some horrific thoughts, not a bad person, not any of that. It's just, they're just arising, right? You didn't think them. So the key here is volitional, right? Intention. Once it pops up, then you go, yeah, I'm going to get that, and now we're engaged. But I've certainly had some thoughts pop up in my mind. It's, wow, how could I think that? And then, what we realize, you didn't think it, it arose. And that's a very different thing. So don't be so scared when those things arise. An understanding of karma and its effects will have a direct effect on your choices, decisions, and actions in daily life. We will become more conscientious and mindful. Instead of putting energy into overcoming adversaries and competing with rivals, we'll choose to cultivate cooperation, tolerance, and forgiveness. The Buddha has vast knowledge and understanding of the functioning of karma, while we limited sentient beings do not have the capacity to specify the exact interplay of karmic forces and other causes and conditions at work in a specific event. We can gain a general understanding by studying and reflecting on the teachings. This topic is very practical and directly applicable to our lives. The Buddha emphasized the importance of understanding karma in this text. Beings are the owners of their karma, heirs to their karma. They originate from their karma. They are bound to their karma, have their karma as their refuge. It is karma that distinguishes beings as inferior or superior. Without compassion, the Buddha shared his understanding of karma with us by recommending we abandon certain actions and engage in others. When we put his advice into practice, we become empowered to stop the causes of suffering and create the causes for happiness. So, we come back to, even though everything about me is interdependent and I didn't arise without the causes and conditions of countless others, and I don't exist without the causes and conditions of countless others, and there's actually no independent me here. Guess who owns my karma? Kind of like a bum deal here. Man, wait a minute. Yeah, wait, how's that work? So the opportunity here, though, is empowerment. The opportunity is, guess what? You can do something. You can change all this. And so the invitation here is, if we understand and search for what we would say true causes of happiness or suffering and so forth, it's always going to be right here in front of us. Like, I always have the opportunity to create a better future. That's empowering. Like, doesn't matter what's happening to me. How I engage with what's happening matters, which means I actually have the power over the most single determinant factor of my well-being and growth and everything, and enlightenment and next life, all that. It's how I engage with and respond to what's happening. Kind of cool. Downside is it's not easy. Yeah, there's that. So then we have all of these practices to help us be more mindful, to water and nurture and grow certain thoughts so that they're going to be more prominent. to engage or have the capacity to have a choice about how you respond, well, you actually need to be present to be able to do that. And so I need to be mindful, need to be available, need to be present. All of which takes effort. So the good news is, yeah, it's right there in the palm of your hand. But in order to access it, these teachings give us the skills and the capacity to let that unfold and to have the potential to have a choice about how you engage with and respond to what's happening. And more importantly, I think sometimes what I'm doing today to grow my future. If you want to grow corn, I have no idea why I said corn, just going with it though, popped up. If I want a bunch of corn, well, if I don't plant the corn, it's just not going to happen. Just not going to happen. Likewise, if I want to have more kindness, compassion, resiliency, more peace and ease in my life, well, gratitude might be a good place to start. Okay. But if I'm spending my time on what I don't have, what's not right, and pointing fingers, all those irritating people show up again. And so what we do today on purpose, without having to react or respond or engage with, what are we doing just on our own to water, nurture, and grow the qualities of mind that we'd like to experience? And so that's a proactive approach. And that's why I like the morning meditations and the thoughts of doing things that ripen your mind in a spiritual way. That's, this big monastery there. There's, if you look at the screen, you see a couple stupas there, which I think is, Dzong Rinpoche's and Trijong Rinpoche. Trijong was the teacher of His Holiness 14 Dalai, one of his main tutors. These stupas and these sort of remnants of these great teachers, are right there. And well, monks will, and lay people will circumambulate, they'll do prayers, they'll do these things. Well, your mind's going in a very virtuous state, and these inspire one, and it feels, very, very different. As a matter of fact, any of you that's heard my stories about David Gonzalez and his teacher that, did a bunch of pujas without David even knowing, to help him get over his liver cancer. He sat in front of the closest stupa there. He traveled, this old Lama traveled all the way down to Ganden from where he lived outside of Bangalore, sat in front of that stupa for day in and day out, and did all these rituals in front of Trijong Rinpoche's stupa. I never told David, all this liver cancer got better and you got healthier, got well. So, interesting stuff that we can, whether or not you could directly relate that or not, I'm going to tell you that old monk felt pretty good about what he did. And all this played a big role, the inspiration, the nurturing of certain qualities of mind. All right, well, it's a good place to stop since that was the end of the section. And just see, anyone have any questions, comments, thoughts, curiosities, or reasonably good jokes?
John, I got a question for you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so
I'm shocked that you have a question, though.
Well,
I'm getting over it.
but I'm just going to keep it to one. So it's like karma is playing out for everything all the time.
Yeah, just think of it as the organizing structure of our experience.
All right. Now you talked about so then there's events that we perceive as positive that are karma, or negative that are karmic ripening, and events that are positive as karmic ripening, right?
Could be, yeah. Everything's got flavors, right? So something that we might ripen that is harmful, example, a lot of events where people hit their rock bottom in their addictions, which is painful, and they've lost someone or whatever. That's kind of ripening in an unhealthy, harmful way, and yet it might spur recovery, right, and a different choice, and it might then become a condition for something quite virtuous, or not virtuous, pleasurable, healthy, meaningful.
But couldn't it happen like, I mean, I know there's always the dark side of this, but like somebody needs medical care and then they win the $5,000 lottery ticket. Would that be, I mean, that could be example of karmic ripening too, correct? If there's cause and effect.
Well, anything that, so if you're getting the 5,000, they only won 5,000. That's not so bad.
Well, if you went millions and millions, then that leads to suffering.
Okay, that's a much better karmic result. Let's go with that one. So you're saying that, let's say you needed healthcare, and that this money showed up, and now you could get it. Is that what you're pointing out?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That that they could be, that as some things happen, other things happen that support you in difficult times. And what's happening is sort of this simultaneous thing, that we might be having some karma ripened in our heart that is difficult, right? I don't like the words positive and negative, so I'm trying to avoid those. But yeah, harmful, hurts, unpleasant.
Or like, getting cancer.
Right. Yeah. Wouldn't want that.
Right.
And it happens. And then this other thing happens. Okay. So two things could be happening. One is, once the karma has ripened for the cancer, there's also that karma as it's ripening, well, it's being exhausted. So that negative karma is being exhausted. And then this other good karma is ripening. So I have medical care, get my cancer treated, which is wonderful, except guess what? That just ripened. So it's exhausting. So
like being born into this rare and precious life is the result of karma.
Exactly.
Okay. Shoot, I didn't write this part down. Oh, but then, so what events in the world happening are not the result of karma?
Everything's going to be a result, because just think of karma as cause and effect. Is there anything that's happening that isn't, when you find something in the world that happened without any cause, then but I don't think we were going to find that.
So all causes are the result of karma. Things don't just excuse me, but shit doesn't just happen.
Right. So, but that's just true, right? Is there anything that doesn't happen without a cause? Period.
Right. Well, I agree with that statement, but you're saying that it's all the result of karma.
Yeah. In other words, if karma is cause and effect, then that's the way you look at it. But I think your distinction is is the sort of ethical or moral aspects of karma, as opposed to the regular normal karma of, you plant a seed, you get a tree, right? That's still karma, but there's not necessarily a big moral thing there. Is that what I'm getting?
Well, no, I'm not really caught up in I'm just caught up in the idea that, we talked about, karmic ripening, the car wreck or the cancer or hitting rock bottom. And those are all like what we would perceive as creating some suffering for the individual. And I'm just wondering if there's sometimes, what's the opposite of suffering?
About joy and happiness.
So is there karmic ripening that creates joy and happiness?
Yeah. So that's what we always want to shoot for. So, but also, the organizing structure. So if we think cause and effect, for happiness, right? Virtuous actions, wholesome actions, good intentions, and, all that's going to be creating the conditions for this happiness, for this well-being. Is always going to come from that motivation, that intention of good ethics, good virtues. So that's where last week we talked about the 10 non-virtues and the 10 virtues, actions of body, speech, and mind. Because Kurt wanted to test me and see if I knew all 10. I think that was what was going on.
And you also talked about, Abe Lincoln's quote, when I do good, I feel good. When I do bad, I feel bad.
Yeah, Abraham Lincoln. Yeah.
That was useful. So
Yeah.
if I do an act that creates good just by dumb luck, that doesn't count as a virtuous act.
Right.
That has to have intention.
Right. So you might have actually intended to harm someone, but the result might have been like you kind of screwed up and it helped someone, right? So even though it turned out good, it's your intention that matters.
Okay, so one more, a couple, I got lots of these, but we'll just end.
See how he said he had one question? He didn't say he had 5 parts
so,
to it.
So one of the virtuous acts is don't kill, right?
Okay, yeah. Don't harm things. Yeah.
So what about, and I know this is probably out there somewhere, but what about like physician-assisted death or suicide if someone's really suffering?
Yeah, so that gets tricky, right? Because your motivation's going to have to come into play.
Our motivation to reduce suffering.
Right. So your motivation might be to reduce suffering, in which case, that is going to have an impact on the overall way the karma will play out. But it gets tricky because sometimes the suffering that we're seeking to reduce, and now there's really my suffering and seeing them suffer or having to deal with them. There's some tricky motivations here. Versus, someone who is, really suffering. They're real clear about their thing and all that. Now, from a Buddhist perspective, in general, taking your own life is not going to be a good result. Okay. So assisting in someone harming themselves karmically can, that gets tricky. But again, there's no, I would say there's still always nuance to things and motivations and things that play out. Somebody's going to do it anyway and so forth. And then, where's our role in that? It gets really tricky. I think, and I would go, the even trickier part would be people who are veterinarians. And, we've had some of our group that are veterinarians and people have their animals put to sleep, right? It's kind of your job. And, and then, how do you work with that? And then some of those calls, sometimes they say, well, this animal could still live and could still do some things. So they can talk someone into, letting it be adopted or placed somewhere. Sometimes they're going to be, put out, and where's your ethics around that? So yeah, it gets tricky, but it always comes back to our motivation. I still have a pain in my heart. I had a dog put to sleep that might still had some time and it had a heart condition, was older and all that, but might have still had some time. But I was a single dad, raising a kid, working 2 jobs. And just overwhelmed and didn't have the capacity to care for it. And the kind of advice was this was the thing to do. And to this day, I still have this twig of pain in my heart, thinking that that wasn't the right thing to do. And so we're always going to have to just really look as clearly as we can at our motivations for these things.
Yeah. I think there's lots of examples about the what if, or like, euthanasia for cats that are killing birds. And,
Yeah, but cats kind of kill birds, right? Yeah, and I also find it fascinating, just it's such a messy world. For example, my tricky thing is I'll watch these, because, me and cat videos on YouTube, but, different animal ones, like, I'll watch these ones where, the prey gets away, like it's being attacked and it gets away. And you're like, yeah, except They're not going to get away every time, and that other one needs to eat, right? And there's this sort of thing, and it's just awkward. The whole thing gets awkward, right?
But
you know,
if that's true, it's cause and effect, and the universe will sort it out.
yeah, and we always just need to keep working with our part, basically.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of gray, but some areas are black and white, so.
Yeah, and just to do our best and to not beat ourselves up. That's the other thing. We can micromanage this and be imprisoned by micromanaging and beating ourselves up, and I just did that. Oh, that's going to create all this karma, or let's just be gentle with ourselves. We're going to mess up. We're going to engage in some of the 10 non-virtuous actions. The thing is, how do we grow from it? Right? How do we grow from it? And the best amends, and this, again, transcends religion. It's even in some of the Kabbalah and the Jewish traditions, all that. I was even talking to this one person of that lineage who said, they're not even big on saying I'm sorry. They're much bigger on changing your behavior. So like the real amends is changing our behavior, right? So when I do something unwholesome, the most important thing is I change. And that's the big transformation. So I'd still say I'm sorry, by the way. Still recommend that. He was just making a point that the most important thing is change our behavior. And so even if we do things, we don't need to micromanage. We just, try to be mindful. Oh, mess this up. Okay, let's purify. Let's try to be different next time. Let's, the biggest part of the 4 opponent powers, you don't need to do a big formal practice, is regret and resolve to not do it again. That's it. So the quicker we can catch ourselves doing something we don't feel good about, have an intelligent regret, learning from it, not feeling like I'm a bad person, and changing our behavior, that's the most important. Those are the 2 of the 4 that are the most important. And we could do it right on the, right there. We don't have to go wait till, meditation time, go apply all the 4. Yeah, I'm sorry. Let's apologize right now. Let's catch ourselves, and let's work on, making a commitment to not be like that again. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Take care. All right. Any other questions? Okay.
I have
Martha
struggled.
had her hand up.
Oops, sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So
Somebody
had their hand. I can't see everyone with these teachings, so I have no idea if people have their hands up. Just unmute. And who is it?
Well, Martha had her hand up for a while, but she's not here. And I don't know where she went.
Yeah, Martha
was saying goodbye. She had to leave early.
Oh.
She was waving goodbye. Martha was,
Yeah.
she had to leave early. Yeah.
But Carla had a question.
Yes, Carla.
I have struggled for a while with maybe the definition of intention, because it seems like unless you're really mindful, you don't have a lot of actual volitional intention. And maybe, like I said, it's just I'm not quite getting the definition of what intention is, because it seems like some of the least mindful activities are what causes the most harm. And I guess I'm equating like intention with mindfulness.
Right. Yeah. So very good point. We're not very clear about our motives most of the time. Matter of fact, most of our motives, intentions, are unnoticed. Right. So we're not mindful. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so but if we look a little more deeply, we can notice that I said something harmful because I was angry. I didn't say something intentionally to do that, but I was angry. So that becomes a motivating force, right? I said it out of anger. And so wasn't, didn't clearly think out what I was going to say, didn't, maybe intend to say something like that. And so these motivating factors can be coming out of sadness or out of grief or out of anger or, tiredness. And so the degree with which that motivation is, which gets very subtle sometimes, is going to have a weight to the karma. But it's rare that us as human beings are as mindful as you're talking about and says, okay, here's a thought, here's an action, here's a thing. And I'm consciously doing it in this way to harm someone or to help someone, but if we look a little more deeply, we kind of naturally want to help some people. And so we did something because we want to help someone. So that's good. Or we did something to, because we're angry and we wanted someone to feel bad. So even though it wasn't the super mindful approach, anger had a role to play. And the other one, compassion, had a role to play. So there's going to be this volitional sense of motivation, even though it's not very clear in the moment, like we're reacting way before we could actually bring our mindfulness to it. So it'll have an impact. The things that don't, I whack somebody in the face, but I didn't mean to, right? Kind of stretching. Oops, didn't mean to. Okay. Totally not, intending to harm someone. But, sometimes, somebody's trying to get my seat, edge over there, want to jump in front of somebody, get, something in line. We're going to notice these things that we do that are self-centered or selfish or, that happen that are much more subtle than a fully conscious thought, where if we were more conscious, we wouldn't have done that. Yeah. So there's gradients here.
Yeah, and there was a sentence back in the text that said something about that Dalai Lama listed destructive emotions as having a role in karma, and I guess that to me made a little bit more sense than outright my understanding of, or my definition of perception of what intention is.
Yeah. So like I know someone who got in a car in a full-fledged rage, got in the car, drove off, was in a fight with her husband and killed somebody. Okay. In her car, had an accident. Okay. So she didn't get in a car to kill someone, but she was so enraged and in such a state of anger, getting in a car and, driving out like that. Yeah, there's going to be some karma there, right? Out of that anger and out of that rage, and somebody died because of that. Even though she didn't intend to kill anybody. But that anger is one of the most destructive states that we can get into. It can create a lot of, not just bad karma, but a lot of harm in general. So these underlying states are going to have an impact. Yeah. All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap up. Let's dedicate the merit and the wisdom that we've cultivated for the benefit of all the beings, for our own continued spiritual growth. Oh yeah, I actually do see the message, by the way, that Martha wrote there. Thank you. And let me pop up the dedication. All right, just taking a moment to be in this moment to remember that there are countless others all around the world that suffer and struggle in various ways. And these teachings that came to us, the conditions in our lives that have ripened for us, they've all been very wonderful in terms of creating the conditions for a path of complete enlightenment for us. True causes of happiness, true causes of suffering, available. These practices being refined and handed down through the centuries have made their way to us. And we've engaged in working with these teachings and with ourselves to be humans that can be kinder, more compassionate, wiser, to ripen the qualities of our potential, of our own Buddha nature. And in the process, it helps all beings. So with that in mind, let us dedicate the merit and wisdom that we've cultivated from our time together for their benefit and for our own continued growth. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. All right. Thank you all so much. Such a joy to be with you tonight. And yeah, dig into this cause and effect thing. So it does kind of kill, when somebody says everything's happening for a reason. Well, yeah, I guess it is, right? There's a cause. Yeah, always a cause. So let's keep creating the cause for our own health and well-being, for capacity to help others, and to bring some more loving kindness into our hearts and minds and out to others as best we can. And always being a compassionate friend to ourselves, so we can be a little more helpful to others. Please be well, take good care of yourselves, and take care of those around you as best you can.
Thank you, John.
So